Hi guys, this is Zach from Watches on You, and today I'm going to be discussing the differences between the Omega Speedmaster with Moonwatch with Sapphire Crystal and the Hesalite model. So the Sapphire, you'll probably know it as the Sapphire Sandwich. That's kind of the nickname that it has earned because it also features an exhibition case back. So first off, I'm going to go a little bit over the Speedmaster, and I'm going to go over the Hesalite model first. So the Speedmaster Moonwatch, as I'm sure all of you guys know, was the first watch to land on the moon, and it's really what made Omega famous and carry it all the way on to today. It's really their defining model. If you had to pick any watch out of the Omega lineup that is their most influential, it would definitely be the Speedmaster Moonwatch. So the styling of the Moonwatch remains very much unchanged from the original. The main difference really is actually the bracelet. The bracelet is fairly redesigned from what the original one looked like. This one has a bit thicker links. It's definitely beefier than the original, higher quality for sure. But the case itself remains fairly unchanged. It's 42mm stainless steel case, and both of these watches share everything the same with regards to case and bracelet. So the Hesalite model, Hesalite is the crystal material that they use for this timepiece. It's an acrylic, it's a type of acrylic, which means it's not glass or sapphire, so it's going to scratch much easier than those two materials. However, with Hesalite crystal, you may scratch it, but it is a lot more chip and, I guess, impact resistant than glass or mineral glass or sapphire crystal, and it also is a lot cheaper to repair since it's a simple piece of acrylic. So if you do scratch this up a ton or something happens to it and you want to replace the crystal, it is much cheaper and easier to do than with the sapphire watch. The Hesalite crystal also, for light scratches and stuff, which are going to accumulate on this. No matter how really well you'll take care of this watch, there are going to be micro scratches that will accumulate on the crystal. However, they're very easily polishable, and most people that have these will just do these at their house. You use a compound called Polywatch. It's mostly used. You can even actually use toothpaste if you need to. You'll just end up rubbing that on the crystal, and a lot of times it will come out looking like new. Now, you can't do that an insane amount. It's just like polishing a watch case. Eventually, it's going to start to deteriorate the design, or at least in this case, it's going to deteriorate, I guess, the thickness of the crystal and then its durability. So you will want to replace it after a while, but you'll be able to polywatch it quite a bit before you'll need to come to that. So it actually is not, the scratching shouldn't be a huge issue for you as long as you take relatively good care of your watches. So now going to the Sapphire Sandwich. So the Sapphire model has, obviously, it's got the sapphire crystal and then also has a sapphire display back, which I'll show you in a little bit. So the sapphire crystal, however, things you can notice about it is the edges of it are much steeper than on the Hesalite. You can see that the Hesalite has much more rounded edges than the sapphire, and sapphire, the way it reflects light is a bit differently, so you do end up, both because of the sharper corner and because of the properties of sapphire crystal, you end up with this white halo kind of around the dial, which you notice you do not get on the Hesalite. And I didn't mention it before, but the original Speedmaster Moonwatch, that had Hesalite crystal. That's why they're still making it with acrylic. Sorry, just if you didn't know that, I'd just like to mention that. So you end up with this little bit of white halo around it. Now, that bothers some people. Other people don't notice it. Personally, I tend to notice it, or at least once I saw it, I couldn't really unsee it. So I'm not a huge fan of it, but a lot of people won't actually end up noticing that, and that's not a huge issue. It's just something to take note of that's different about the sapphire. No, however, the sapphire is going to be much more scratch resistant. So if you do bang your watches around a little bit more, the sapphire will have a lot longer longevity just because it scratches it's very hard to scratch. So I guess if you do bang your watches around a bit, sapphire might be the way to go, even though most kind of watch collectors and people in the watch world tend to prefer the Hesalite just because that's true to the original model versus the sapphire. But you also may argue that's not a big issue, because if you look at like the Rolex Submariner, didn't originally have a sapphire crystal, now it has a sapphire crystal. So that's kind of up to you whether you think that's a big deal or not. So now let's go to the display back. So this has the sapphire display back where you can see that wonderful movement So you can see it's finished absolutely spectacular. You can see Côte de Genève, you can see perlage under the balance wheel, you can see beautifully finished cams in the chronograph, and one thing that's really cool about this watch is you can actually see the chronograph function. So I'll just make sure I'm pressing the right pusher here. So if I push the top pusher, you can see it when I start the chronograph and when I pause it. So right now, just make sure it is running. And now when you reset it, here, you can see all the cams go back to the resting position, which is just really cool to be able to watch and see. The movements in these watches are both the same. They're finished exactly the same and everything. The only thing is, on the standard Moonwatch, you do not get the display back. And the original watch did not have the display back either, so that's one thing. Another thing people will tend to prefer, or big watch collectors will tend to prefer with the Hesalite model. So now finally, let's go to the last difference between these watches, and that is the price. So the Sapphire model is going to come at $6,350, and the Hesalite's going to come in at $5,350. So it is $1,000 difference, which I think necessarily shouldn't be underestimated. Being $1,000, if you're worried about the Hesalite crystal, the number of crystal replacements you can get for $1,000 on this watch is well over 5. So I'd say you should at least be able to get 5 crystal replacements with OEM crystals on the Hesalite before you come to the cost of the Sapphire. So that's one thing definitely to take note of as well. If you really do want to see the clear case back, that's another thing. I love watching that movement, and I think it's fantastic. That's probably the main thing that would turn me towards the Sapphire, not the crystal on the front. There actually are some models, though, where they did do a Sapphire back and acrylic front. Those are older, and they're a little bit more hard to get, but they are out there, and I think that's a really cool combo. So that's the thing. There is a $1,000 price difference. So if you really want the clear case back and you just don't want to worry about scratching your watches, then sure, go Sapphire. If you want to stay true to the original and you don't really care about necessarily scratching your crystal up because you can replace it or polish it up, then go Hesalite. Personally, I would go Hesalite. I prefer the look of Hesalite. I don't like the white halo. I notice it. Also, one thing I notice about Hesalite, I'm not sure if this is really true or not, but something I've noticed is that it tends to not show fingerprints as much as the Sapphire crystals, which is another pro I see, and I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate. That's just what I've seen from personal experience. But in the end, it's up to you. Just figure out what fits your lifestyle best and do whatever you would like. Again, I would go acrylic. I'd like to stay true to the original and save the $1,000 while I'm at it. But some people might want the added functionality of the Sapphire. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope I answered some of your questions about these two watches. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.